Hi there. This is a thought for the day, and this is a little different kind of a thought. This comes from a book called Human Brain, Human Learning by Leslie Hart. And this is kind of to get you to think a little bit about education because Trump is changing the Department of Education pretty dramatically. Don't worry, be glad. I was an educational consultant for almost 20 years. And there are things that are just never going to work with the way we have been doing education. And so I see that change in the Department of Education as a step in the right direction. So Leslie Hart was an educator. This was one of the most famous books on education back in the day. And he says, perhaps there's no idea about human learning harder to accept for people familiar with classroom schools than this. The idea of neat, orderly, closely planned, sequentially logical teaching will, in practice with young students, guarantee severe learning failure for almost everyone. Can I read that again? The idea of neat, orderly, planned, sequential, logical teaching will result or guarantee severe learning failure for most people because that's not the way we learn. The most common visible experience that the conventional classroom teacher has is that of presenting lessons this way and finding that extremely little learning results. And that shows up as recitation, tests, or in homework. Yet, teachers cling to this procedure, often feeling inadequate or guilty, or suffering what is now fashionable to call burnout. Why? Because they're not succeeding. Instructors have been led to believe, as they believe the day will follow the night, that students should learn from logical sequential presentation. The reason, it seems to me, after many discussions with teachers, is simply that school from early childhood has meant, above all, an institutional building, not learning. School is a building characterized by classrooms in which active, aggressive teaching goes on in the same way that a tennis court is a specialized place where tennis is played. School goes on in the school building, in the classroom. Teachers feel that they have been hired to teach and that they must control all that goes on in the room, that it's wicked and reprehensible not to drive the class and where the class is going, and that their status with coworkers will rest mainly on their aggressive teaching and management efforts. Not to teach in a school is seen or felt as a breach of behavior, something like going to church in a bathing suit or eating popcorn at a symphony concert. School does not signify a place where continual study goes forward on how best to educate children for the world they are in, but rather it's a building dedicated to certain old, little changing activities. One enters the building as an employee to perpetuate these rituals. Otherwise, one goes elsewhere. As Cates has said, quote, education has not suffered when teachers are free to run schools as they see fit. It has suffered from the suffocating atmosphere in which teachers have to work. And then another educator named Slavin maintains, quote, the problem is not with teachers, who I find to be overwhelmingly dedicated and hardworking. And I found the same thing when I was an educational consultant. Teachers went above and beyond again and again. So the problem is not with the teachers, but with the classroom system they are trained to use that guarantees failure for so many. A disconnection, indeed, a head-on contradiction, exists between the aggressive behavior forced on teachers and what they have observed about real learning. They know that students in today's information-rich world would learn a great deal, but not necessarily what fits the official curriculum. They know that both youngsters and adults pick up learning in a very random happenstance fashion from all sorts of things, all sorts of real experience. Such useful competencies, such as money management, cooking, home maintenance and repair, games, sports, crafts, hobbies, healthcare, social skills, are all plainly acquired in this random happenstance way rather than through coursework. And even when courses are taken, for instance, in Chinese cooking or electrical wiring, or even learning to play bridge, they often have defined limits and can account for only a fraction of the whole attainment. In other words, going to take a course in something gives you the basics, and then people flesh that out with all of their other experiences. Again and again, teachers find that students have learned very specific things, much wider and broader than what you get in the classroom, because they went on a family trip, or maybe from the mother's political activities, or the father's occupation. What has been recently seen on television or read is also a teaching moment in many cases, and sometimes it's just a chance event that you witness. A child learns to spell Labrador and can locate it on a map because he has been given a Labrador puppy. Administrators, too, know how ineffective logical instruction can be, but even those who would like to make change may dread the task of challenging the logic myth, either with their public or with their teachers. They, too, are caught in the system's trap. Very few have had the experience of bringing about anything more than marginal student learning gains, except where exceptional failure has been rectified to usual failure, and even that is rare. As public pressures for more learning increase, the logic myth may become intolerable. The conventional outworn system supports the logic myth, and the myth supports the system. The brain offers the brain approach, human brain, human learning. The brain approach offers at least the hope of cutting this Gordian knot by changing the question from how should schools be run to what does the brain, the organ for learning, require for best learning to occur? And here are a few things to think about. Number one, the brain, the organ for learning, took shape tens of thousands of years before Greek sequential logic was invented. No part of the brain is naturally logical. Number two, while a logical arrangement or presentation may serve the needs of transfer of information between people who already have good knowledge of the material, this kind of presentation produces consistently poor learning results with students who are not already familiar with the material. Students prior to learning cannot perceive the logic that may seem apparent to the instructor. Number three, Since we learn individually in different multi-path sequences, with previous individual experience as the foundation to which more learning is then added, logical group instruction inevitably produces a large degree of failure. Number 4, examination of the useful learning we have acquired as adults shows that the bulk of that information has been acquired at random and from random experience. Number 5, the tremendous acceleration of learning and human capabilities attributable to science resulted from breaking away from the old style logic, especially word theory. The great bulk of scientific and technical discovery has occurred fortuitously in the course of persistent effort and high input. It also occurs mainly if persistent effort and high input is not working, the breakthroughs come in dreams, intuitions, visions, sudden insights. You know, you're driving to the store to get milk for dinner. All of a sudden you see something and it creates a whole chain of events and you get something, you figure something out. Number 6, we can point to very little in our world that has been accomplished by old style sequential logic. Number 7, our view of logic as respectable, high achievement, rests on a surviving tradition that has not been examined. And the last one, sequential logic plays a large part in the building of a curriculum, and the conventional classroom school system has become a specialized place where this kind of aggressive teaching is done. Alternatives are little considered. Both teachers and administrators are caught in the trap. Considering the requirements of the organ for learning, asking what does the brain need, how does the brain work, that may suggest a whole new kind of education is needed. So as you go through the day, think about when you were in school. How successful did you feel? How much did you really learn? How much of what you learned are you using every day? And then think about all the other ways you have learned. Information is everywhere. Think about that. Don't worry, don't fuss about the coming apart of the Department of Education. Instead, think about what kind of education system would you have loved to be in. Make a great day.